Hi everyone, my name's Curtis Campbell. I'm a Senior Marketing Manager with Hughes. I'm joined here by my friend and mentor, Randy Palubiak, President of Enlightened Management Group. We've come down here to Atlanta to learn from the best. And so Randy, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit.
I've been in the enterprise communications business now for quite a while, although I started out at broadcast television and then moved into video production, corporate production, and then into the satellite communications side of it, which brought me into the enterprise communications sector. So I've been involved in it for quite a while, worked with a good number of organizations and companies, helping them meet their visual and video requirements, mostly corporate communications and training. And for the past 20 years have been with Enlightened Management Group, where we've again helped our customers with their visual-based, video-based communications.
You've spent the better part of 30 years in the broadcast and media creation business. And as part of that, there's a huge employee engagement ingredient. So maybe based on your experience, what does that definition mean to you?
Well, I think in brief, it's that employees are emotionally and enthusiastically involved in their workplace and in their organization. That's, to me, the best description or explanation of engaged employees.
Based on your experience, why is employee engagement so important?
Well, Curtis, very good question, and I think statistics are probably the best thing to tell this story. According to one study, for instance, about 51% of U.S. workforce is not engaged. Another one finds that disengaged employees are costing the U.S. about $500 billion annually in lost productivity. But on a positive note, companies that do have engaged employees outperform those without engaged employees by about 200%. Highly engaged businesses will realize about a 40-41% reduction in absenteeism and about a 17% increase in productivity. The tell-all for it is that it costs a company about 33% of an employee's salary to replace him, he or she.
We know that replacing just a baseline, even $10 an hour employee in even a retail store can cost upwards of $3,000. So that's some real money that companies are leaving on the table when somebody leaves. And so therefore they have to do a lot of investments to be able to get those people back. You know, I also heard there was a Harvard Business Review. Maybe you saw that same article that talked about this very thing. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that that review article comes from about 20 years ago, but it's still extremely relevant today. And what it points out is that profit and growth are stimulated primarily by customer loyalty, and that loyalty is a direct result of customer satisfaction. Now, satisfaction, it's largely influenced by the value of services provided by customers, but that value is created by the satisfied, loyal, and productive employees. So it always goes back to employee engagement and employee satisfaction.
Today's shoppers, we're really educated, right? We go into a store, we have all the information we want. We expect that the experience in the store to be fabulous, right? That's what we want. We want a fabulous customer experience. And what you've just shared with us is telling us that really better customer experiences start with employee engagement. You know, if you don't have an employee to engage the customer, how can you expect the experience to be great? In your mind, and maybe draw on some examples from your own experience, what are some critical ingredients in employee engagement?
Well, I think it starts with the executive level and getting executive buy-in, because if you don't have that from the top to the bottom, then you're in trouble. I believe it's also a matter of communications. The technology, as we may have mentioned earlier, has been extremely invaluable in terms of how it's helping us to get the content out to our employees wherever they are, whenever they need it. It's also important to provide feedback channels for the employees. Let them realize that they have a channel to not only hear from the executives and the managers, but they also have the opportunity and the tools that allow them to respond to, interact with maybe, but more importantly, give their feedback to the organization and let them, from that point, also respond back to the employees and let the employees know that they are being heard, that they have that open channel, and it's a two-way channel. The last thing I think is that you empower the employees and the personnel, that they're able to make decisions and do things that are in the best interest of the organization.
communication, but not just one directional communication, but communication from the employee to executives, and a communication from the executives down to the employee. So it's creating that channel, that free-flowing channel.
Absolutely. It's got to be two ways, or otherwise the employees are not going to be engaged.
What are employees wanting, or what are they expecting?
Yeah, that's another good question. With all the tools that we have available to us today, and you have to think about it from the consumer aspect of it. Every individual now is carrying at least one, maybe two mobile devices that they're able to use, that they're able to view, get their text messages, get their phone calls, but also use as capturing devices, cameras that they can contribute the content. So it's a matter of taking advantage of what they want, the way they want to use it as individuals, and bring it into the workplace. The companies who are successful in doing this are making sure that they are integrating all of these personal devices into the corporate systems, the corporate and enterprise-wide communication system. So they want to engage with the corporate side of it and share their content as well with people in their areas. But bottom line is that it's the two-way communications, that they are empowered, but also that they get guidance and support from management, not just the ability to interact with, but get some responses that give them ideas as to what they need to do.
How are companies now taking this strategy that's adopting and taking in everyone's technology and all this? How are they using this technology and these strategies to improve?
Well, the ones that are doing it right are making sure that they've got the tools that gets the content out continuously, regularly, consistently, and in a way that the employees can both access it and respond to it. Again, the key thing is to make sure that employees are engaged and that they have the channels to provide the feedback. If you miss any of those elements of it, then the organizations are falling short. So in the past, you had organizations that would typically put out annual surveys asking questions of the employees about what they may like, what they may want to do. Now it's a matter of put them out more regularly. The tools allow it to happen, and they get the benefit of continuous and reliable feedback from the employees. So here's an area where statistics also provide a pretty good story, a pretty good indication of what's going on. One study has found that about 42% of employees had access to any means of communications to provide their comments and suggestions. 42%, that's not a number that I would get excited about. I believe it's got to be a lot larger than that. There are also studies that indicate that the majority of employees, about 58%, do not believe that their concerns will be addressed in a timely manner, if at all. Unfortunately, these organizations that are like this, that just don't have those types of channels, they just don't have a solid foundation for trust, much less a high likelihood that they're going to have good employee engagement.
So drawing more on this technology, how are these companies leveraging that technology to inform and engage the employees?
Well, I think some of the key aspects of it is what are the technologies that they are using, and they've got a wide berth of things to select from. So you've got video conferencing, telepresence systems, webcasting, streaming, satellite-based or terrestrial-based networks. Satellite-based ones are typically called business television networks, but they also are interactive distance learning networks. You have social media with all the different apps, and now over the last few years, you have software companies like social media companies like Facebook with their Facebook Live. You have Skype and Google Hangout. All of these different channels are a great, let's say, quiver of tools that can be used, because not everyone uses the same technology, the same device. You need the mixture of it to get it out there. As an example, digital signage has become a prevalent vehicle for getting communications out throughout corporate facilities, both for consumers, our guests, as well as employees.
Where have you seen these efforts to empower and engage employees be successful, and where have you seen them fail?
Well, I think the successes are the ones that are the companies that are implementing the tools across the whole ecosystem, which includes internal and external channels. The external will be referred to as the cloud. Everybody's hearing and reading about the cloud and storage on the cloud and how people can access that content. It's also mobile devices. We've talked about how everyone is carrying one or two mobile devices to the point where they're now being referred to as digital omnivores. An interesting term. I'd like to know who thought of that one. But the ones that aren't working are the ones who lack the systems. They are not integrating or making interoperable systems throughout the organization. In a sense, they're creating silos or allowing silos to happen. And so you've essentially established gatekeeping for the communications throughout the different departments and business units. The other thing is the policies, the practices, the guidelines. If they do not educate and inform their people about the tools that are available to them and how they can use it, both to contribute the content as well as the accessing of the content and using the content, then they're falling short and will probably have a communications gap or a lack of good communications and good employee engagement.
We've talked about a lot of technology that companies can roll out. Let's say if I'm just starting at the very basics, where do I start?
What you do first is you take a look at the existing systems and technology and capabilities you have. You evaluate what channels are throughout the organization, and you just get your arms wrapped around that. Because what we have found is that when years ago there was a centralized video production group who is responsible for all video-based communications, that has changed today. Now the technology is basically so complex and it's all computer-driven that it resides typically in the IT organization for the infrastructure side of it. Of course, you all have all of the video production elements and things that are required, but you want to make sure that you've got a system that's centrally capable of managing everything throughout the organization. But you're also going to find that in most companies that you have different silos that have been built up where different departments and business units have acquired their own capturing and video recording capabilities, their editing capabilities, and in some ways distribution capabilities, but those are usually limited. They need the corporate side of it to take care of them and help make sure that everything is well integrated again. That all starts with developing a business strategy. You need a media business strategy that has all stakeholders involved. Everybody from the user side of it, which are executives, down to the various departments that need to communicate to employees, have to have an input into it. And then they have to, and you collectively look at who's the target audience. And it can be different from one group to the other, or it can be all encompassing of everybody throughout the organization. So you have to identify the target audience. You have to identify where they are, what tools are needed to get to them, because it's going to be different from a manufacturing organization to a retail or a services organization. And then you have to determine what is this content that may be used on it and provided on it, because that will also help dictate the tools that are used and the frequency of the content. Once that's all done, and then you can get into the technology side of it, what pieces do you lack? What, in essence, a gap analysis that can determine that our systems right now are capable of doing X, Y, and Z with certain capabilities and functionality, but these are things that we need to do and we don't have those pieces. So we then have to look at who's capable of providing that. But that kind of encompasses the whole process that people would need to address to make this thing work.